The market is pricing in a Fed cut, but the Bitcoin chart is telling another story. By the end of this video, I will tell you if I'm bullish or bearish for Bitcoin for the week ahead. We're gonna dive deep into the FOMC statement, some key economic data, on-chain analysis, and of course Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and Solana. So before we dive into the charts, let's talk about the FOMC statement and what is going to be the impact for the economy overall and of course for crypto. Although they announced a rate cut, we have to consider that the context is key. And although we are flying blind with no economic data releases for anyone, I strongly believe that we are in a recession. But nevertheless, the Fed already stated that the scenario is uncertain. And they were particularly concerned about the elevated inflation. And based on my previous videos, we have been following inflation and we can confirm that it is under control at the 2.2%. The problem is going to be if that spike right here supports above the 2.2% and continues to go higher. But if it is just a temporary spike, I expect the inflation to go back down, which is going to be positive for the Fed. So we may have actually some short-term risk on as the markets price the easier policy. But in the first point, I don't think this is going to be actually too significant, maybe some mild price rises. On the second point, however, we got the confirmation that the QTE stopped already, but the QE will only start on December 10th. So this adds even further confirmation that we're gonna have some modest positive tailwind for crypto, but nothing too significant. But in order to follow through that liquidity that can come into the market, I am watching closely the ETF inflow. And from my previous video, we noticed that we are already recovering, and I'm gonna keep an eye on the closer look on the ETF inflow. As long as we stay positive, this means that the price has a high probability of going up. Another catalyst for the bull scenario is the fact that although we're not gonna have liquidity from the Fed, we might actually have more retail participation. Retail participation is now the highest since February 2021. And I strongly believe that can actually drive the prices to go up. And since we're talking about risk-on scenarios, this can also be confirmed by the shift between Bitcoin and gold. And based on the DSS and the RSI already hitting next the 30 level, we can expect some reversal of liquidity from the retail from gold into Bitcoin. We do see the bond markets continue to go down, which is going to be more confirmation of rate cuts, but I believe that as soon as we start 2026, we are going to have more liquidity tightening. And since we are on a data blackout, the Fed reinforced the dual mandate of keeping employment healthy, but the inflation is still quite elevated. And since the US shut down from 3 weeks ago that I mentioned on my video, any news that's going to be headline driven will be a strong catalyst for prices, either good or bad. Until then, we can expect the Dixie US dollar index to get a last pullback into the 7-year support band and then continue its new trend to the deflation on 2026. So that short pullback that we see right here by the end of this year, it is going to be a confirmation that we are actually to go bullish. Now, when we take a look at our Bitcoin base case, we are still holding above the 50 weekly moving average, and the price just retest the 10 daily moving average within the daily cycle window. This gives me a strong confirmation that we are about to go up. And I also have the confirmation from the DSS who just crossed after the weekly cycle low, and the RSI is starting to trend up. So our base case, it is still actually bullish. And take into account that the Fed will only start QE on December, we're still not gonna see the M2 Global Liquidity Index raising too much, unless we get much more liquidity from other countries. In the meantime, as long as the M2 growth and borrowing rate is held at this level, it is actually a good sign for bullish. Because it means pretty much that we are going to be able to hold this 108 support band. Now, on the 4-hour time frame for Bitcoin, we can see that we already got the 4-hour order block that we drew from our last video is already filled. And just like I mentioned, we had a aggressive liquidity sweep from the downside as further as the 109,200 level. At this moment, we have the confirmation that this is the daily cycle low. The price broke above the 10 daily moving average and tested. We expect the price to continue to go up from here, in which we can also have the confirmation from the DSS, which is about to reverse, and the RSI that is as low as the 36 level about to reverse as well. But I will not be impressed if the price gets as low as the 108 level, because we have a lot of liquidity waiting here from the downside. Who knows, until the end of October we can have some choppiness and some volatility, and then we finally start to go up on November. But a really strong confirmation that I have right now is the Fear and Greed Index, which was at the fear level and right now is starting to go back into the neutral. So to me, the scenario for Bitcoin is relatively bullish. Ethereum, just like Bitcoin, also hit the order block at the 3,900 level, holding strong the 3,700 level as a support band. DSS and RSI also showing signs of a reversal, so we can expect the price of Ethereum to go back up. However, XRP doesn't look that good. My first warning sign here is the fact that I see a lot of liquidity sweep from the upside, which is a strong sign of a bearish scenario. Price is getting liquidity from this level, and then it is starting to break down. However, the best scenario here will be that we are actually going to have a pullback into the 50 weekly moving average and the daily moving average. Then, if closes above this, we can expect the price to go bullish, but if crosses below, then the scenario for XRP is quite bearish. Solana is showing strong signs of a bullish as well. DSS and RSI also reversing. Order block at the 93 level also has been filled, trending above the weekly and the daily moving averages. We can expect Solana to continue to go up. Litecoin doesn't look that good. It is actually trending below the 50 weekly moving average, so I expect the price to go up here, get a retest, and maybe go back down. XVG is in a similar situation. Although the RSI and the DSS are showing signs of a reversal to the upside, it is trending quite below the 50 weekly moving average, so I'm not very confident if XVG is actually to go up. Zcash is still trending quite bullish, but the problem is, when I see a coin continue to go up like this for such a long time, I started to get cautious. Maybe this is one of the last pushes for Zcash before we started the bear trend. And this is exactly why I like to evaluate altcoins individually instead of the altcoin market in general. What I do believe is that we're gonna get some alt season only after Bitcoin has reached its peak, and then we can clearly define that this is the end of the bull run for Bitcoin, and when we actually start to trend down, then is actually when we're gonna start those other altcoins to perform even more. But again, not every altcoin is going to have an injection of liquidity and the price will go parabolic. I do still believe that we are trading in a recession, liquidity is limited, and we're not gonna get all the altcoins to perform tremendously. So just be cautious, evaluate each one individually, and tell me what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching.